So Mattel's collapsing. One of the senior salespeople at Mattel Electronics went to go work for this tiny computing company up in the Seattle area. And the guy I worked for at Mattel went to go work for him. He said, hey, Bruce, the company I'm working for, they're kind of really geeky and nerdy, all techies, but they're really looking for people who have the ability to call on the retailers who have a real sales marketing knack. And I think you'd be great at it. And they had a product called Microsoft Word.
Clue in the name. Yeah.
Yeah, and they had a product called Microsoft Multiplan.
Right.
Pre-Excel. Got the job to be a salesperson for part of the New York metro area. And again, because I was so good at understanding the technology enough, the products enough, it was recognized by everybody at Microsoft. And then I got promoted to call on the major chains. And there was a sales meeting of just the major chain and distributor managers in Bellevue. I was sitting in either second row or third row, and either in the fourth and fifth row was Bill. And I'm kind of hearing this behind me, not turning around to look, but something's going on a couple of rows behind me. Bill stands up and he goes, you guys don't know what the you're, and using pretty crude language talking about. All I can tell you is the next time we had that meeting, that guy was not there.
The guy was gone.
Bill was intense. Bill would fly coach. Bill would, when we used to go to Comdex at the computer show, everybody would share rooms. You would think this was a starving company.
Right.
Even though the company was, the company had MS-DOS, the company was getting royalties left and right. The company, the apps were beginning to take off. But I remember those days, and it was an education. For me, it was like drinking out of a fire hose because it forced me to learn about technology in a way that I would have never learned anywhere else because I was surrounded by technologists.
And your interactions with Bill at the time, I mean, did it occur to you at the time, and it's arguable, right? But I'm working for a genius, feasibly, because it's probably not an exaggeration, right?
Like, I was frightened of Bill.
Yeah,
and Bill was kind of weird at the time. We'd go to these sales meetings, and he'd have too much to drink. The next thing I know, he was out of control, literally out of control. Again, my age, I was in my late 20s, maybe 30 at best. He was a 30-year-old single guy, but I was intimidated by him.
Sure.
And most of my interaction was with sales and marketing. I was so close to the ultimate user, the ultimate customer. I had a lot of confidence and ultimately credibility to go back to the company and suggest things that they should do. I'm pretty street smart about this stuff. And I think that's what differentiated me.
And that was appreciated by the Microsoft leadership.
Microsoft leadership, Microsoft product people, Microsoft salespeople. It was like they recognized my unique skill. I remember giving notice at Microsoft, and I remember getting somebody sending an email to Bill saying, hey, we should not lose Bruce. So here's a company that's printing money hand over fist. And they ended up giving me a counteroffer, which I, at the time, regretfully refused. For a number of years, I thought I blew it. He was intensely bright. It's like, I'm staying away from this thing because I just didn't have the confidence to deal with him.
If you had to, from that period at Microsoft, that first stint, if you had to encapsulate your learnings that really informed your leadership style and your leadership insights later, what would they be?
The intensity of Bill and the company, the bar that was set, Bill was relentless.
Yeah.
And he knew, and this is something I appreciated over time, if he could own the word processor, he could own the desktop. He was able to convince Steve Jobs and work with him closely on Word and Excel to differentiate the graphics. Remember, this is at a time, it's still MS-DOS, not Windows. Windows is in the labs. He's going, if I could make these apps successful on Mac, it gives me a vehicle to showcase Windows. And then once you own the apps, you own computing. You own all of end user computing.
And it was that kind of like commercial vision that maybe stood out to you, right? Like how to look for opportunity almost.
This is like, you own the world if you could do that.
Sure.
And he was intense about it. He was driven. He was driven. And that drive came down, relentless. And that stuck with me, that intensity. So if you're gonna do something, do it with intensity is kind of the lesson I learned. It was becoming more and more technical, more and more, less and less retail, more and more enterprise, selling to corporations directly, way out of my comfort zone. I remember calling on the VP of IT, I think it was for J.C. Penney's. And I was intimidated because they understood technology. I had no clue for how enterprises worked. And then there was some corporate politics around me. I'm going, wow, this is not fun any longer, even though I had all this credibility in the company. And that's when I made the decision to leave. I don't need to put up with this BS. I'm not having fun. I'm going to go off and do something else. And then that's how and then I got the counter offer and held on to that letter. You kind of look at what developed and wow, much more fulfilling than just being CRO.
Soul of the CIO is sponsored by Nextvink. Now, if you work in IT, you'll know too well how disruptions can derail productivity fast. Nextvink's AI-powered platform for digital employee experience keeps you ahead. It uncovers issues others can't see and resolves them automatically with employee-centric AI and always-on automation. Employees stay productive, IT stays proactive and even preventative, and leadership sees results. Nextvink, ahead of every IT disruption, behind every strategy. Learn more at nextvink.com.
Oh, let's explore the next chapter.
Yeah.
So where was the counteroffer?
A few months later, Apple was spinning out their software. And I had worked closely with Apple while I was at Microsoft. Because when I was at Microsoft was tiny. Apple was big. I was responsible for the New York region. I've got 10 Apple salespeople for one of me. I'm going to teach Apple how to sell Microsoft Excel and Microsoft Word. And this way I get leverage. I got to know them really well. And I remember meeting with Bill in New York. And Bill was a coach, was forever a coach, was on Apple's board when Steve came back, kind of mentored Sergey and his other founder, and Eric Schmidt at Google, was one of the mentors at KP, Client Perkins. He was the coach of Silicon Valley. And he ended up recruiting me, ended up taking the job. Ultimately, he called me up. Two things happened. One is Apple got cold feet. They felt like they needed to own the software, and they weren't going to take the company public. B, he really wants me to move to California to take over as head of sales. And scary because my family, my wife's family, all East Coast based. California, people, they behave differently. They're different.
What do you think made him the coach of Silicon Valley? Like, what qualities makes you that? Like,
an amazing leader. I don't think he was ever a great manager, but incredible leader. Like, if Bill was going to jump off the cliff, he'd have all these people following him.
Yeah.
And because he painted a vision, he valued contribution, he valued individuals, he took the time to develop a personal relationship with everyone. He was somebody who I wanted to please, and everybody else wanted to please.
And
Because he cared about my success. He forced me to learn every aspect of running a business. I never worked in a corporate environment before, like staff meetings and company meetings, all because I was a sales guy. I was out in the field. This was a new experience for me, learning how corporations really worked. I learned how to be less aggressive and tone down my New York attitude and be more sensitive to others.
interested, before we move into this a little deeper in your time on the West Coast or its beginning, contrast for me the corporate cultures of Microsoft and Apple at that moment.
By the time I got to Apple, it was a company that was not focused. John Sculley was a terrible CEO, and they were trying to do too many things, too many products, too many versions of the Mac, too many experiments, operating systems. They were just an out-of-control company. Windows was taking over, and they were in denial mode, how successful Windows was coming. And I'm sure people got it, but they couldn't execute.
Couldn't react. Yeah.
They couldn't react.
Meanwhile, you're Bill Gates running this super lean, obsessive operation still. You know?
Yeah, and I'm running, and I'm working this in this small little entity that's focused on
both. Yeah.
on. We're trying to figure out cross-platform software. We're trying to develop for Windows. We know our parent really doesn't want us to develop for Windows, but we're telling them unless we're multi-platform. And meanwhile, Microsoft is executing left and right.